Coming up on F1 24/7 this week, Ross Brawn reveals that Nico Hulkenberg was close to signing with Mercedes back in 2013, F1 to review the Formation Lap radio chat rule, and Toto Wolff says that he is happy to go to court as Christian Horner calls for the FIA to examine the Mercedes role in the Racing Point case. A big question that's normally asked in the world of Formula 1 is, what if this happened? What if that had happened? What if Michael Schumacher didn't go to Ferrari? What if Ayrton Senna didn't join Formula 1? What if Lewis Hamilton never joined Mercedes? Well, actually, that nearly didn't happen. Well, sort of, in a way. Of course, Lewis Hamilton was coming off the back of a very disappointing spell with McLaren. He had a really good start to his career, but then it kind of dipped away in terms of reliability. He just didn't believe in the project anymore. So he jumped ship to Mercedes, who at the time were a mediocre midfield team who had promised to do things into the future. And they were certainly looking into the future in terms of the V6 eras that was coming up in a couple of years' time at this point. So Lewis Hamilton has signed on the dotted line to join Mercedes. However, it could have been very different, because Ross Brawn revealed this week that if Lewis Hamilton hadn't have signed for Mercedes, Nico Hulkenberg could have been alongside Nico Rosberg for 2013. Now, this comes really appropriate as to what's been happening in recent weeks. So in case you're not aware of this, Sergio Perez, the Racing Point driver, contracted COVID-19. He tested positive just before the British Grand Prix, about 24 hours before the start of FP1, or just under 24 hours. So, of course, he had to stay away, self-isolate, and he wasn't able to race throughout the course of the weekend, so Racing Point needed a driver. They searched high and low. Van Dorn, his name was in the mix, but he had Formula E commitments. Gutierrez, another driver who was linked, but he doesn't have a super license anymore. So they were like, who do we go for? Well, turn to one of the most popular guys on the grid, was on the grid, Nico Hulkenberg. He came back for a 2-race spell in Formula 1, and it gave us that real good feel factor in the paddock as well. And of course, a lot of people did like to see him back. So yeah, it was quite surprising when I read this, because I mean, at this point in 2012, Hulkenberg was at Force India. He had a year at Williams, missed a year. I think he was in a testing role or a reserve driver role with Force India, and then he had the full-time seat in 2012. And Hulkenberg was still a promising young driver. He had done very well in the junior categories. He got the pole position in Brazil in 2010. And at this point, you were thinking, and judged by his performances in that Force India, again, just not a brilliant car, but he could have won the Brazilian Grand Prix, for instance. Oh, imagine if he didn't hit imagine. Anyway, moving on. So yeah, how different things could have panned out if he had signed for the Silver Arrows. So yeah, he was a big favourite to be replacing his German counterpart, Michael Schumacher, who was going to be retiring. And just think how things could have panned out differently. Lewis Hamilton wouldn't have won as many titles as what he did with Mercedes. He probably might have. Well, in fact, if you think about it now, he wouldn't have won a title at McLaren at all. I'll be surprised if he was still there, for being totally honest. But yeah, I would imagine that Nico Hulkenberg, 2, 3, 4, 5-time world champion. Hey, it's a possibility, and I think he could have maybe not easily done it, but it would have been very, very good to see Hulkenberg and Nico Rosberg at the same team in a Mercedes. Now, maybe you could also say, well, yeah, of course, you're going to choose Hamilton over Hulkenberg because Hamilton is the better driver. However, you are going to choose Hulkenberg because he is up and coming, he is also a good driver, but he's German. So I think that would have helped things in the marketing department, because it certainly helped having Rosberg and Schumacher in the same team. So replacing Schumacher with another German driver makes perfect sense. And it just happened to be Nico Hulkenberg. And as well, Ross Brawn added to the end of his statement that when he was on about Nico Hulkenberg, he said, I almost signed him years ago when I was in charge at Mercedes. If Lewis hadn't have joined Mercedes when he did, Nico was our next choice. I've always respected Nico enormously as a driver. He's a very strong driver who should be in Formula 1. And I would agree with this. I would say, okay, Hulkenberg, he is a good driver, and certainly he's not out of Formula 1 just yet. Unfortunately, his options ran out at the end of 2019 when, of course, his Renault seat was taken up by Esteban Ocon. He was then left, where else was he going to be going? Alfa Romeo was an option. I think he held talks with them. The same with Haas, but nothing really materialised. And I was adamant he was going to go to Haas. It was the most likely destination to remove Grosjean and bring in Nico Hulkenberg. That didn't come to anything. Then he did leave Formula One. And I was thinking at the time, like, yeah, I would say Hulkenberg, let someone else have a drive. Let someone else have a go, because I'm more seeing the younger generation coming in through the ranks. And there are some drivers in Formula 2 that could be ready, but ultimately it is up to the team to decide whether they want a young driver or an experienced driver. And Romain Grosjean, like I've said this before, and I even said this in Agree or Disagree yesterday, that he brings a lot of feedback to the team. He's a brilliant guy, for setting up the car and giving the engineers good feedback. So replacing him with a driver like Hulkenberg, added that he is a better driver, I would say that would be a brilliant move. But of course, we don't know if Haas are going to be here. That they're going to be here next season. I explained all this in Agree or Disagree yesterday, so go and check it out if you haven't already. So yeah, what do you think, guys? And by the way, as well, just to think about this as a question for you guys about Nico Hulkenberg. Should Hulkenberg be in Formula One? And there are rumours, and he has admitted this, that he has held talks with 2 Formula One teams about a possible move to them in 2021. And judging by his performances in the Racing Point, I think that has just maybe helped his cause just a little bit. Who do you think he'll be joining in 2021 should he come back? Does he deserve to come back to Formula One, or do you think that he's had his time, he's finished, and somebody else from the younger category, Formula 2, should be getting that drive as well? Leave your opinions in the comment section below. So the next story is about Team Radio, and more precisely to that is Team Radio on the formation lap. Now, this is something that was a big talking point about a couple of years ago, which has tended to died off just a little bit, but after the Hungarian Grand Prix only a couple of races ago, it's cropped back up again. So back in 2017, there was a technical directive issued to all 10 teams, basically stating that a driver should be able to set up the car, do its clutch bite points, his burnouts, whatever, all the setups, on his own, unaided, on their way to the grid. So you normally see it on before the start of a race, you see the cars on the track with the engineers, tyre blankets over the cars, over the tyres, lift them off, they run off the track, the cars go away very slowly, and that's of course the formation lap to get the temperatures up on the tyres, get everything, all the settings ready so when the cars do launch, it's at the right point, it's at the right speed. Previously to 2017, the race engineers would tell the drivers what settings to put onto the car. Now, Formula One took away this almost handicap, I would say, and gave some skill back to the drivers. So the drivers would have to change and do all the settings on their own. And it has done a lot of unpredictable start in recent weeks. I would say recent years actually. And yeah, I would say it's been okay. I would say, and also like I said earlier, it hands back skill to the driver, because we want to see drivers on their own initiative and not just on their race engineers front. But this is why it's cropped up again, because just before the Hungarian Grand Prix, on their way to the grid, it was damp, it was raining, and a lot of cars were on intermediate tyres, and some of them were on the slicks. Now, just before the cars went onto the grid, or some cars went on the grid, both Haas boys of Romain Grosjean and Kevin Magnussen dived straight into the pits and changed from intermediates to slicks. Now, you're probably thinking, well, I'm pretty sure that's happened before. Isn't that okay? Well, it is okay. Only if the driver makes that call on the formation lap. The race engineer cannot have no input in that. And it was clear as day, that's exactly what happened. The drivers were saying, oh, I don't know about slicks, should we go on slicks? And the race engineer basically explained to them, yes, I think we should, let's dive into the pits. It was their call, not the drivers. And after that race, both drivers received a 10-second time penalty. Now, this really frustrated Gunther Steiner, because not long after just after the British Grand Prix, there was a turn one incident on the first lap at the very last corner where Alexander Albon went to go for a move on Kevin Magnussen. Those two came to blows. K-Mag got punted off into the gravel trap, into the barrier, and Alexander Albon carried on. Now, Alexander Albon was issued with a 5-second time penalty with that, which Gunther Steiner was like, well, that surely warrants a bigger penalty than what we got. And he's got a good point, because how can you issue a longer penalty for what? For telling the driver, okay, we should go on slicks? Does that warrant a penalty? I mean, yeah, I think it does, because it's against the rules. It's simple as that. But the Albon incident was more serious than what the Haas boys encountered in Hungary. So yeah, he's got a fair point with that. So good to understand it went to the FIA and basically explained what I've just explained there about the whole penalty thing. So they're going to rethink it and reintroduce some new rules regarding this. Now, whether this is as linear penalty or maybe they will give some skill back to the drivers. I don't really know, but I do think it should warrant just a small penalty. I would say. I think a 5-second penalty would be all right, at least a minimum 5-second penalty, because it is a rule. You're not supposed to do that. That's what it clearly states. So if you break that rule for whatever reason, if the driver said, if K-Mag and Grosjean said, okay guys, box for tyres now. Okay, K-Mag, we'll be ready for you. That's fine. But if the engineer says, okay, you box now for dries, it's not allowed because they're telling the drivers what to do on the formation lap. So it's got to be their own call. So maybe it's either don't do that again or wait until lap 1. But obviously Haas had nothing to lose. So they were like, well, let's gamble now. But obviously it didn't pay off because they got that weird 10-second penalty for each cars. So like, yeah, I do think they need to revitalise and have a more look at these other rules. Keep that skill with the driver because we do want to see the drivers more in control with their machine rather than engineers telling them everything. Even though just give them some sort of information but not like absolutely everything. Give that skill to the driver. Then it does make starts more unpredictable. We do see some bogging down, some false starts and yeah, some bad starts for instance as well, as we've seen in recent races. So yeah, I think they should do that. But and as well, it actually kind of plays into what we were discussing about in Agree or Disagree yesterday about rule consistency. What's that going to be doing in terms of the future? So let me know in the comment section below about what you think about this. Should the driver keep this skill? Should the race engineer be telling them what to do on a formation lap? Should they be making that call when it comes to tyres? Was that a harsh penalty, a 10-second penalty for those two cars? Does Goodness have a point? A lot of questions. Get them down in the comment section below your answers. And finally, again, this topic it's not going to die down no matter what is going to be happening. So, as we know by now, the Racing Point has got the exact same car as last year's Mercedes, the W10, they've called it Racing Point, there are loads of protests, blah, 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 but there is a little bit of light to it. Well, I thought there was going to be some light to it, but it just made things worse, if I'm being totally honest. Like, nothing has been settled by this. So in case you're aware, Renault were protesting against the Racing Point's brake ducts, who of course said, right, okay, we haven't done anything about this, we haven't copied the Mercedes. It was then revealed that Racing Point did have in their hands 2019 brake ducts from the Mercedes car. However, the brake ducts last year weren't listed part, however, they were listed for this season, so they couldn't use it, but they still had it in their hands, they could have easily copied it directly in front of them. It's just a big mess. Well, I say mess, but Racing Point were issued with a 15-point deduction and a $400,000 fine just before FP1 at the 70th anniversary Grand Prix. And this debate is just not going to die down. I think about 4 or 5 teams have protested the penalty, and one of them is of course Racing Point, who have said, no, that's too much, that's a bit harsh. And then all the other teams who are protesting are going, no, that's too lenient. Come on, guys, like, they broke a rule here. They broke a sporting regulation, not a technical regulation. But a rule's a rule. I mean, I don't know what the hell's going on here. Anyways, so Toto Wolff has said in this week's headline that he's happy to go to court because Christian Horner has told around the FIA and tell them, look, there is something going on here. There has to be. Like, Mercedes, there must have been sending some sort of data to Racing Point, that there has to be some sort of communication. And Toto Wolff is going, nah, alright, come on then. I've got nothing to hide. Let's go for it. That's what the impression is going down here anyway. And you are going to be a bit peed off by this because obviously Red Bull, they know Racing Point are a threat. Racing Point cars, they are quick. They can beat the Red Bulls. The Red Bull car, that is a quick car, of course it is, but it is a handful. And Albon, he's still getting the grips with the car, and Verstappen's just being Verstappen. He's just out driving the car, let's say. Could you say it's out driving the car? I would say it is. It's not a brilliant car, but Max, of course, being the driver he is, you know what I mean? Just give him that Ferrari car, replace him with Sebastian Vettel. He could probably do bits in that better than Sebastian Vettel. And of course, Max Verstappen won at the 70th anniversary Grand Prix as well in that car. So yeah, proves my point even further. I mean, I think it's one of these things that we may never know anything about because, I mean, from what I know is Racing Point did have in possession the brake ducts, like I said before. The front of the car, the front brake ducts, last year did have the Mercedes did have Mercedes brake ducts in their car, which obviously means they had to integrate it into this year's car. The FIA said that's perfectly fine. It's the rear brake ducts that are the problem. So that's what they're getting fined on, the rear brake ducts, not the front ones. I mean, I don't know where I stand with this. I really, really don't, because it's like I said before, I don't think we'll ever know the official answer to this. I think Racing Point might get a slap on the wrist. They might get another fine because teams aren't going to be shutting up about this. Renault are going to be protesting this till kingdom come. Even Ferrari have got on board with this as well. Ferrari getting on board with protests as well. So even Williams are on board as well. So I mean, I do like Racing Point's concept of if you can't beat them, join them. But at the same time, it's just caused this huge fiasco. And I mean, it's given us something to talk about, I suppose. That's probably a really good thing about that. But yeah, I don't think this debate is going to rumble on. It's not going to die down anytime soon. And judging by this as well, of course, Total Wolff is just saying, look, nothing's been transferred, let's go for it. But of course, Christian Horner, he's never going to take his word for it. So he's going to be going to the FIA a lot. And I think this could rumble on for beyond the end of the season, possibly even into next season. That's how long it could be going on for. And he actually ends the statement with, and if someone thinks that we've done something wrong, they should protest, and we're happy to go to court. So obviously Total Wolff is very confident that there is nothing wrong between this. And Lawrence Stroll even said on Sky Sports that they're making us look like absolute idiots, making us look like fools. So I think everyone's got their own opinion on this. Some people think it's illegal, some people think it's not, some people think it's right, people think it's wrong. What do you think about this? Basically, what's your opinion about this situation? What is rumbling on between the Mercedes car and, of course, the Racing Point car from this season? So, guys, this is where I'm going to wrap up F1 24/7 News. Thank you so much for watching, as always. Leave your opinions in the comment section below about anything that I've said in today's news articles. And, as always, all the links to the news articles that I've been talking about in today's episode will be in the description below, so go and check them out and see for yourself and have a bit of a more in-depth read. I'm just basically the idea of these news stories is just I kind of say a little bit of it, give my own opinion, hear your opinion, then we move on to the next one. So it's almost like a news thing, but at the same time it's like twisted and having our own opinion on it, because at the end of the day we are a debate show and we like debating. But obviously, thank you so much for watching, guys, like I said, and if you're new around here, then please like and subscribe as well. We're gonna set ourselves a target of 3,000 subscribers before the end of the season. I'm putting it in stone now. We're over halfway there. Let's go. Let's see if we can do this. We've got some really good content coming up for you guys in the next couple of days and next week as well. We're going to be trying some experimental videos, something different for the channel, something that we're not really done before, but we're going to get on board with because we really want just to go forward, just do other videos for our sake and, of course, for your sake as well. So, guys, thank you so much for watching as well. Tomorrow we've got a preview coming out. Saturday is the F1 debate show. Sunday is our Spanish Grand Prix race review live stream with me. Yeah, and of course, yesterday we had our Agree or Disagree coming out as well with F1 Fanatics, so go and check it out if you haven't already. But guys, thank you so much for watching. Watch what you're doing. Stay safe, as always. And until next time, I'll see you later.